Our next performer, Lynn Macksey. She's 27 years of age. She's been an ICU nurse for 27 years, pardon me. So she's probably like 30. She decided to go to nurse anesthesia school. She's a 3 AANA journal. She's had 3 AANA journals articles published, 2 pocket guides, and 1 textbook. And she works at UNC Chapel Hill. So, North Carolinians, are you guys in here? Little Rams in here, all right? You guys represent, put your hands together, please, for Lynn Macksey. She's performing the agony and ecstasy of being a CRNA.
Good evening. And yes, Keenan, I am 27 and get her done. I am so delighted to be here. This is great fun. I thought tonight I'd talk about some things that are common for all of us. There's definitely some negatives to working in a hospital and working with some patients, but there's also a lot of positives and a lot of funny stuff that goes on. So we're going to talk tonight about the agony and the ecstasy of being a CRNA. So I was flying here. I was coming out of North Carolina, flying in from Raleigh, and we hit a little turbulence. I just settled back in my chair, and I hear this scream, and I guess a first-class passenger was cutting his steak, and his knife flew through the air and cut him in the thigh, and he's bleeding all over Hell's Half Acre, and a very level-headed stewardess gets up and calls for a surgeon over the intercom. Very nice man gets up and walks up there, and I'm kind of settling back in my chair, and the surgeon goes up and starts prepping the thigh and gets ready to sew it up, and he looks up at the stewardess and says, "I'm going to need an anesthetist." Stewardess gets on the intercom and says, "We're going to need an anesthetist." And I think, wow, I got some mad skills. I can go up there and what am I going to do to intubate him? I don't know what I'm going to do. And I walk up to the surgeon, and the surgeon looks up to me and goes, "Can you reposition that light?" So there's a medical convention, and a female doctor and a male doctor meet up, and they like each other, and they go out to dinner, and they decide to take things to the next level, and they go up to the hotel room. And before they get too serious, the female doctor gets up and starts washing her hands, and she comes back, and they're kissing, and they start making love, and pretty soon the female doctor gets up and starts wanting to wash her hands again. So they finally finish making love. She gets up and washes her hands again, and she comes back from the bathroom, and the male doctor says, "You must be a surgeon." She goes, "Wow, that's really good. How'd you know?" She goes, "Well, you're always washing your hands." She says, "You must be an anesthesiologist." She says, "Well, how'd you know that?" "Well, I didn't feel anything." "I don't remember anything. And now I feel like throwing up." So who's glad the election of 2012 is over? I couldn't even turn on the TV. If I watched one more commercial, and adversarial, and who hates who more, and who's stupid, and what, oh God, I couldn't stand it anymore. And they're already gearing up for 2016. Can you even imagine? So why is it that we only have 2 choices for president, and we have 50 for Miss America? Come on, people. And you know how medical terms are always in Latin, and the prefixes and the suffixes, and it's all in Latin. And if you take the word politics and break it down, poly, many, ticks, bloodsuckers. I believe that politics is the second oldest profession in the world, but I understand that it's a close comparison to the first. But no matter what side you vote for, whether you're right or you're left, healthcare is changing. But I didn't realize quite how much it was changing until I went to see my PCP the other day, and he was wearing the pants I donated to Goodwill last month. It's getting bad out there. And the pharmaceutical companies nowadays, they can't do the whole prescription drugs. And so Viagra, they're now passing out 2 tongue depressors and a roll of duct tape. And what's awful is that the tongue depressors taste a little bit like fudge sickles. But as they try to do the prescriptions of Viagra, they're coming up with more and more clever ways for people to pay their money so that they can get Viagra. And now they have some very clever commercials like Viagra, strong enough for a man, but made for a woman. Viagra, what's up? How about Viagra? Quicker, pecker, picker, upper. You know, there's some universal truths to being a CRNA. You may be a CRNA if you occasionally park in the spot that has the doctor's parking only sign and knock it over. If you're exposed to so many x-rays you consider it a form of birth control, you may be a CRNA. You know that everything becomes humorous eventually. You know, as ICU nurses, we were super OCD. Like you go to tear off a piece of tape, and if it had that little string thing, then you had to throw the whole thing away and go over and start the whole thing. But now as CRNAs, I think we're OCD on crack. When I go in to give a break, especially to my male colleagues, I spend half my time doing the lines up and picking up those little popper tops that are hanging off the plus card so I can throw them away. I'm so OCD, I'm not OCD, I'm CDO because it has to be in alphabetical order. You know you may be a CRNA if all you can picture is a dialysis machine when your obese diabetic patient with a carton of cigarettes in her purse and her fake fingernails tells you she can't afford her beta blockers. If you've ever referred to an obese patient as having biscuit disease, you may be a CRNA. If you ever have to work so hard not to laugh out loud when your patient in pre-op who has a sex toy lodged up in his rectum and how he slipped in the shower. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You all know what the tooth to tattoo ratio is? Get her done. If you have your teeth. You could have a patient with a TTR of just 2 who's been shot, set on fire, run over in a truck in the bar parking lot where he just drank 24 beers, and you know that SOB's going to be angrily demanding a cheeseburger when he wakes up and back you. You know you can't cure stupid. You're a CRNA. If you call your patient a slut when she's a gravid of 7 and she's only 22, if you believe in the aerial spraying of Prozac, and you believe there should be a Versed salt lick in the waiting room, for those of you who give sedation anesthesia when patients are having their colonoscopy and the interesting things that they can say to you, like, you used to be an executive at Enron, didn't you? And doctor, could you please tell my wife that my head is not up there? And now I know how a Muppet feels. If you want to avoid unhealthy shoppers in the mall because you're terrified you're going to have to do CPR on your day off, you may be a CRNA. If you're assessing patients' Malin-Potty scores in the mall, seeing how you're going to intubate them, you may be a CRNA. If you've ever told stories in a restaurant, the people at the next table start throwing up. And finally, you know that a double-blind study is 2 orthopods looking at a 12-lead EKG. So Keenan was correct. I was an ICU nurse for 27 years before I went back to school. And for all you math geniuses out there, I was 45 years old. And without even a little bit of drama, it was the hardest thing I ever did. I moved my family, my 10-year-old, my 12-year-old, 2 half-dead cats, my husband, and 2 36-foot moving vans from Orlando, Florida up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I went back to school. I was in class with 20-year-old something who went out partying every night, and they came in with their dark sunglasses on, and they had hangovers, and they'd walk by the director of our program and go, "Hey there, Big Daddy." They didn't get me at all. I didn't get them at all. They called me an adult learner. They made straight A's. I did not. But it really wasn't my classmates' fault because I was a freak. I had so much of the weight of the world on my shoulders. We were going broke. It was $100,000 in debt, and I didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and I honestly didn't know if I was smart enough to learn anesthesia, but I kept putting one foot in front of the other, and I kept doing what I needed to do. But they'd ask me, you know the Blackboard, the computer program where you get all your information? Well, I kept looking around the classroom for a chalk and eraser. And one of my classmates asked me if I had a flash drive, and I thought she was talking about Batman's car. Like, what the hell? I sat at my desk studying 16 hours a day, and I'd curl my legs around, and I'd eat licorice because it was quiet, because I wanted to stay awake. And I kept thinking they'd find me dead from a pulmonary embolus because I was all curled up at my desk. I had a decubitus. I was going through menopause. I had hot flashes, and I had enough hair growing out of my chin that Amish farmers were envious. When I got all done with school, I invited every single human being I knew. That was the hardest thing I ever did. I wanted people to come and party with me, and at the Heinz Stadium in Pittsburgh, it was incredible. And I wrote everybody, and I said, you know, I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to challenge myself. I'd been terrified of taking care of kids. I wanted to reinvigorate my brain, and I wanted to do it with class and style. I wanted to look like Audrey Hepburn, and well, it turns out I look more like SpongeBob, but, you know, I still graduated. And truth be told, who's ever seen the Ice Age movies? You know, the squirrel? Getting that? That was me. That's exactly what I look like. And just a question for you. But for those 28-year-old students who were in my class who were still living at home and didn't have to work and they could go out and party every night and everything, weren't they adult learners too? Not that I'm bitter. So here's what I know. Besides the eternal truth that brain cells come and brain cells go, but fat cells live forever, we are CRNAs. We're highly educated. We work harder than anybody. We accomplish the impossible, and we're activists for our patients. But I don't get that I'm in the room doing all the work when the anesthesiologists are standing in the hallway or they're going to Congress and telling them how I'm not safe. But I sure am safe at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing a bring back heart. I must get stupid when the sun comes up. So I believe you need 3 things in life. You need a wishbone, you need a backbone, and you need a funny bone. I think we got the funny bone down. I think we got the backbone down because we're CRNAs. But here's my wish. I wish we didn't say yes to unreasonable demands just because nobody else wanted to do it. I wish we had the power, and we knew we had the power, and then we got organized, and we treated each other kindly and with respect, and we gave money to our PAC. That we knew how hard we worked, and that we were advocates for our profession and for ourselves every day in everything that we did. And even though there's agony, there's certainly ecstasy in being a CRNA, and I'm proud to be one. So one more story before I leave for tonight. So a doctor goes into his patient's room, and his patient was awake, and he goes, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you're awake." He says, "You may not remember this, but you've been in a terrible accident. You were out on the highway, and you've got some fractures, but we'll be able to fix it, but your penis has been shorn off." And that's exactly what he said. But the doctor says, "Listen, we got some insurance money coming in. You got $9,000, and we now have the ability to rebuild your penis, and it works great, but it's $1,000 an inch. So you need to figure out what you're going to do, and I understand you've been married for 40 years, so you need to incorporate and have a conversation with your wife. If your penis was a little bit too small before, and you build it too big, might put her out a little bit. But if it was big before and now you're making it small, well, she might not like that either. So you need to involve her in the decision. And the patient. For the foundation, we'll take it. I caught a fish this big. Okay. So the patient promised he would, and he went off and talked to his wife, and he came back the next day, and the doctor says, well, did you involve your wife in the conversation? He says, yes, sir, I did. And he says, well, you know, did you talk about it and everything's fine? And did you decide what you're going to do? And he says, yes, we did. And he goes, well, what are you going to get? And the man said, granite countertops.
That was wonderful. Definitely. Wow, that was wonderful. Does she like what she does for a living? I can't tell. It's like a lot of ups and downs. That's all right. That was very funny. Quite embarrassed listening to penis jokes in front of my mom. And she was laughing at him too. Oh, yeah, come on. She's a grown woman.